Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Adam Mathews with Mathews Counseling, and we are here with Elizabeth Pugliese, an LCMHCA and LCASA with a therapist with our practice. And we're talking about World Mental Health Day today, which Elizabeth, just tell us a little bit about World Mental Health Day. What is it? There's all these days now, so
Yeah,
what is it, and why is this one important?
right. So definitely not wrong there. Like there is, seems like there's kind of like a day for everything now. This one is kind of established by the World Health Organization. They established this in 2013, and every year there's a different theme to it. And I think this year's theme is making it a global priority for all. Um, and so just kind of wrote a blog on just the kind of importance of mental health and just what it is. I think there's also um, even like globally, I think in different ways, like not a full understanding of what it might mean and how it's different than other physical health and
Uh,
other parts of our well-being. But yeah, so it's definitely something I think is important. Obviously, like I chose this
yeah.
career, right? But
Well, and I think it's the awareness around mental health. I mean, that's why we have these days, right? Is to bring
yeah,
this awareness to it. And I like the idea of this year's theme being about prioritizing mental health because I think that's something people just tend not to do. And as much
right.
attention as it's gotten, particularly since the
Yeah,
pandemic, it's gotten a lot more attention. It's become a lot more okay, for lack of a better word, to seek help for your mental health
hmm,
and wellness, but there's still resistance to that. I think and people don't recognize, I think, fully the importance of their mental health, right? So talk a little bit about that. Why is it so important, right? And I know we're
yeah.
talking generally here, but from your standpoint, like why is it so important?
Right. And I think like the interesting thing about this year's theme is kind of like the keyword prioritizing it. And I think that the importance is that there's so many like benefits that we can't even predict for ourselves. Like there might be unintended benefits, like I might want to work on my sleep schedule and have better sleep, but then the other results of that are maybe better relationships, better communication, better performance at work or school. And so just kind of feeling happier, more energy physically, maybe having reduction in physical symptoms
Yeah,
of a variety of stuff. And so I think it's important because it really does just affect our lives kind of in every way. And the thing with mental health too is it's why I feel like it's hard to prioritize for a lot of people, is that when we kind of pay attention to that and try to work on mental health specifically, we might not see the results right away.
uh-huh.
We might not always have like a clear answer of like what's causing certain symptoms as well and what we're experiencing. And it can take time, and it's such like an individualized way of approaching wellness as well.
Yeah.
Like something like another medical reason, like there might just be like a prescription that's like a standard prescription everyone would get, but mental health is different. It's very
Yeah.
individualized, and it's hard to sometimes see those results right away as well.
Well, I think we don't attribute things that are happening in other areas as affecting our mental
Yeah,
health, right?
right.
We don't, because it's so interconnected to our physical health, to our relational health, to our spiritual health, to everything that makes us like overall health. Mental health is affected by all of
Yeah,
those things, right? Like if
yeah,
we're not sleeping well, and that's the thing. Sleep's the good example. Like if we're not sleeping well, our mental health is going to tank,
yeah,
right? Like 100%. And so there are things like that that we don't always go, oh, this thing that's happening is affecting my mental health, or my
right.
mental health is affecting this thing that's
Yeah,
happening, right?
yeah. I feel like it's very cyclic, and it's like hard to kind of recognize, let me focus on the mental health part of this and use that as a way to maybe break that cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's important. So what do you think are the reasons? Like, why is it, like the World Mental Health Day is focusing on prioritizing mental health because people don't. Like, what are the challenges with like to an individual prioritizing their mental health?
Yeah. And I think like mental health can just mean something different for different people, right? Like sometimes like I see a lot of folks, and maybe that's recognizing I want to change these patterns in relationships or breaking generational trauma, or it's kind of a specific, more maybe a more specific thing like improving sleep. or certain types of anxiety thoughts. And I think there's also, it can be hard, either like lack of access, right? Like specific
Yeah.
mental health services, whether that's therapy or something else. It also might be able to kind of recognize as a priority if base needs aren't met. And so I think there's a lot of things that get in the way of that, and also a kind of a lack of understanding as well, and just a stigma of, oh, it's just in your head, just get over it. But I mean, the brain's a pretty important organ in our body, right? Like our mental health kind of
Yeah.
comes from like our brain as well. And so
Yeah.
it's
I know that
definitely,
that last one is me, right? That last one is 100% me. I go,
yeah,
oh, I'm just gonna get over it. Just
yeah.
buck up,
At some
like,
point, I think everyone said that, yeah.
yeah,
And they're also like, some people really do have that kind of like pressure. They probably aren't in a safe enough environment where they
yeah,
actually can have access, even if they, financially could, for example. And so I think there are a lot of barriers, but I also, like you were saying, there's so much more awareness of it now, and people are um, way more open about it. And I think other people then see that benefit. And I even had a client the other day talking about, a lot of clients actually mention this and how they kind of tell other people that they might be um, going to therapy or working on mental health. And then turns out a lot of people they know are also doing that. And so it's one of those things, like, we don't always talk about to other people, but
yeah.
a lot of people will say that. And then it's just kind of like a connection there as well.
Yeah, I think just admitting that there's some we still associate mental health with crazy, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
like some kind of really dangerous thing. If your mental health is suffering, it's dangerous. But when we look at it, everybody is benefiting from therapy when they go, and it's much more. It like I think prioritizing it a lot of part makes it. It is moving in the direction of saying this is just something just like our physical health that we're focusing on, and that we're putting effort into and that we're prioritizing, because it's just as important, right? And so it's something we all can be doing, and kind of lowering that threshold of saying if that is something to be shameful of or hidden from
Right.
is still really really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some things that we can do to really begin to focus on our mental health and wellness. What are some things that you suggest that you think we can help move us in the right direction?
I think there's lots of things. I think one thing is just kind of recognizing, maybe um, identifying like in what ways might you need support or want to make changes in your life. I think just kind of knowing where to start and prioritizing that can be a good place to start. And then once we kind of figure those things out, we can then figure out, okay, well, where do I turn to next for that type of support? And maybe there's also different types of self-care things, like if it's a like physical self-care, like sleep and nutrition, or meal prepping, or even just kind of getting a schedule in place and getting a routine and structure. um, there's other things that can be helpful, so just reaching out to friends and enhancing connections or strengthening connections we already have is a big one.
But I like
Or
that. I like overall that idea that you're talking about of if we don't know where we want to improve,
yeah,
right? That it's going to be really hard to make any kind of gains toward that. And so
right,
just saying like, where do I want to feel better? Where
yeah.
is the thing? Where is my mental health suffering? And
Mhm.
trying to identify like where we want to go can be really beneficial, right?
Yeah. And
That's a
sometimes therapy can be helpful for that. Like we can help kind of identify, like,
right.
as you know, right. And or they might discover like along the way, oh, there's other areas that I want to work on as well. And things are connected, and just kind of help clarify what is a priority.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned something else that is helpful as well is this idea of consistent improvement versus immediacy, right? And I think that talk a little bit about that because I think that's just such an important point to make.
Yeah. I think, and I mean, this could just be like a modern day society thing too, where like we like just like to see, we're used to having like results immediately, right? Especially with technology. And but I think the thing with mental health in particular, when you make those improvements, um, there are certain results that you might not see until like weeks or months later. And
Mm,
there might be other steps of progress, like, which we might not even recognize, like this is progress, and it is, right?
yeah,
Like even just maybe opening up more or writing down your schedule is progress.
Yes.
from not having a schedule, even though if you haven't done it yet, right, it's still a step in the right direction. And I think people can easily kind of forget or neglect that even taking those steps
Mm,
is progress in itself and can be really significant for a lot of people. Um, and it's the little things that add up. And I
yeah.
think that there's definitely like when making like intentional changes or um tracking things or trying to like be aware of like what
Yeah.
we want to do differently in that moment, it feels like nothing's changed, but there is change. And sometimes I think we also can be like our own harsh critics. Like we
That's
might
right.
say like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm not really changed, like nothing's different, but other people might actually notice like actually there is some improvement. Like,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people can be surprised by that too. And I think I'm sure you've had that experience too, like monitoring clients' progress um and just kind of recognizing like there can be a difference in how we see our own progress versus other people too, and just kind of that objective outlook
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, you're basically just talking inside my own head right now, like oh, like all the things
Yeah.
that happened there, because I think I know I want it. I want like immediate change
Yep.
happen, or else I feel like, why am I continuing to do this?
Right.
And a lot of times it is, I think too, like I like what you said about there's this like kind of snowball gathering steam rolling down a hill, like even just showing up for therapy or showing up for yourself with a walk or
Mhm.
whatever it is, or the self-care routine that you want, even a piece of it, that consistency. Because sometimes I think, I don't know if you see this with clients or you feel this way yourself, but sometimes I think we want it to be, we arrive at this journey, right, or at the end of this journey, and then we're done, right? As
Yes.
opposed to prioritizing mental health means that we're doing it for our lifetime, right? And we're
Yes.
continually doing that because that's what keeps us moving. It's not linear, right? Like it's not a linear thing.
Right.
Like it's up and down, but it
Yeah.
keeps us moving up, more up than down, is if we're continuing to do that and we're establishing those routines, those things that are really helpful, those things that we can kind of fall back on. I think for me, it's like oftentimes I go, if I'm in one of the downward parts, it's like, oh, I'm not doing those things that I used to do,
Right.
right? That's helpful, and I can get back into them, and then it's being that consistency then
Yeah.
kind of builds a lot of gains, right?
Yeah, and I think I love also how you said it's not linear. It's something that I also like to say to I think all of my clients, like everyone's journey, and it's like a journey, not a destination, right? Like it's kind of similar to just how we grow as people. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes even those downs can be a benefit because we learn from that.
Mm,
And that can be again a step in the right direction. And so
yeah.
yeah, I
That's
really
so
like
good.
how you said that.
And then the last, I hope it's obvious. I mean, we're we're therapists, right? And so the last one you mentioned is getting help, right?
Yeah.
Support and reaching out for support.
Yeah.
And I hope that one. I don't know. It's obvious to everybody. It's still kind of stigmatized a little bit, but it's becoming less and less. And and anything you want to say about that one that's just feels important to you.
Yeah. I think in therapy in general, it takes, I would say most people, if not all the clients I've ever worked with, spent a good amount of time thinking about going to therapy before they actually did. And I would say probably all of my clients have had that experience. And one thing that I always kind of ask is why now? Like, what was it for you that got you to this point? I think that can be helpful too to ask like, at what point do you feel like you're ready, right? And it can be hard to, or maybe you feel like you want that support but just also not sure how you're going to be ready to take the next steps, and
Yeah.
that's okay too. Like that's what we're here for, is to help clarify that with you. Um but I think it can be hard because it's like it can feel like trial and error sometimes, right? Like
Mm,
your relationship with your therapist is the most important part of that. And so sometimes it's a matter of just finding the right person. There's difficulty with, some access, and insurance can get in the way, and it's hard. But I think also that, you know, results have just shown kind of over and over again, it can be really beneficial and life changing for a lot of people. Again, assuming you're with like the right therapist for you, but we're kind of here when you're ready. And then or if you're not sure, right? And even if you just want to say like, hey, what's this about? Maybe just have one session and then think about it. And so it's really kind of catered to what people want it to be for them.
That's really
But yeah, it's I think that there's, like you said, there's a shift now, like people are more open about it, and we're here when you're ready.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things to me too is just you were just reminding me is that I believe that the people that, come to therapy, like that first phone call is super heavy, right? Like
Yeah.
it's hard to like
Right.
pick up the phone and make that first phone
Yeah.
call to get that help, right? And people delay it over and over and over
Mhm.
again. And it's understandable, right? Like it makes it hard. But I always like just say that I think the people that come to therapy are some of the strongest and most courageous people that there
Mhm.
are, because you are admitting you need help, right? And
Right.
you're reaching out for that help, and that's an act of strength. That's not an act of weakness,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And I think that that's something that I hope we can just say over and over and over again to people is,
Right.
like you're coming to therapy is a strength. It's not a weakness, and
Hmm.
moving in that direction, I think is
Absolutely.
really, really good.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much. If you want to know, we'll link to Elizabeth's blog post in the bottom. We'll also link if you want to schedule an appointment with Elizabeth. There'll be a link for that as well, or any of our other therapists. We also have low-cost therapy options. We try to make it as easy as possible for you to get into therapy. We're also in network with several major insurance providers. So don't wait. Click that button, reach out for help, and prioritize your mental health. All right. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thanks.